Azure's Platform as a Service, or PaaS, is a full-featured cloud development and deployment environment that has the tools you need to produce everything from basic cloud-based apps to complex corporate applications. You pay for the resources you require on a pay-as-you-go basis from a cloud service provider and access them over a secure internet connection. So in today's session, we will be discussing all about Azure's PaaS. But before we move on, please make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube channel and enabling that bell icon so that you will never miss any updates from Intellipaat. So let's get to the agenda of the session. First comes what is Microsoft Azure, and then comes Microsoft Azure Services. After that comes Azure Portals, and then Azure CLI, and finally our last topic will be Azure's PowerShell.
Once again, welcome to all of you. This is an Azure training session where you are into. So thank you all for joining, and once again, welcome to all of you. Now today is our first class. So today what we will do, we will talk about what is cloud computing. We will try to get some understanding about cloud computing. We'll talk about various types of cloud service model, deployment model. We'll talk about various services on Azure platform. We'll understand about resource group. Now, these are the topics that we are going to discuss, right? Where we'll talk about the cloud concept, right? We'll talk about IaaS, we'll talk about services, we'll talk about various types of components and services that we can provision in Azure platform, right? Different ways of how we can provision and deploy services to an Azure environment. We'll see some demo and hands-on, and we'll do some Q&A also. Okay. Now, overall, if you see this curriculum, right? If you see the entire curriculum, we're going to talk about various things like Azure IaaS, service model, deployment model. We're going to talk about these things. Then we'll talk about storage. We'll talk about Azure storage services. We'll understand various things about storage. Then we'll talk about files, tables, queues. We'll talk about various .NET integration. We'll talk about various .NET level integration, right? How you can integrate with your .NET. We'll talk about web applications. We'll understand websites. We'll talk about application insights. We'll talk about database. We'll talk about applications. We'll talk about Redis cache. Right, a lot of things. We'll have a lot of demos there. We'll talk about API. We'll learn about API management. We'll talk about debugging, serverless monitoring, security. We'll talk about Key Vault. We'll talk about Logic App, right? We'll understand about various things about Logic App, nested Logic App, and various Logic App. We'll talk about enterprise integration. We'll learn about various enterprise integrations. Then we will understand about Azure functions, bindings, trigger. We'll learn about role-based access control, and finally the last topic that we want to discuss will be ARM template service bus, right? And then we'll talk about cloud migration. So this will be the overall training program what we are going to do. Today we are going to discuss about some of the core concepts of Azure, right? Before I start with Azure concept, the first thing that you need, so these are some of your Azure prerequisite. Can you see here? These are some of your Azure prerequisite, right? If you have knowledge on this one, it is good. If you have knowledge on this area, so you should have basic knowledge of infrastructure, like what is a network, what is a subnet, what is LAN. You should have various knowledge on different OSI layers. You should know what is an IP address. You should know what is MAC. You should know what is subnet. You should know what is a protocol. You should know about ports. You should know what is a data center. You should know about servers. You should know about VMs. You should know about storage. You should have some basic networking concepts and some basic developer concepts and programming concepts. These are your prerequisites which we need to install, right? And these are the things that you need to learn, which means these are prerequisites, things to learn. Okay, so you need to learn these things. So you go do some little bit of learning. Go to the internet and try and learn these basic things. I'll anyway give you some guidance. These are some basic concepts which you need to learn. Guys, you all got the prerequisite and the things that you need to have a basic understanding before we learn Azure. Now moving on straight. Now the first thing that you need to learn and understand is that before we go ahead and start our curriculum. So this is our training curriculum, what we are going to start. We are going to discuss about introduction to cloud computing. We'll talk about what is Microsoft Azure as a platform, what are the various services that are available, right? And how we can provision them. One by one, we'll learn about them. But before I come to cloud computing, what I wanted to tell you is that the most important thing is that you need to have an Azure account. These are Azure subscription account, which we need to have. I will tell you how do you create an Azure account. I will explain you. Okay. So what you guys can do, you guys can follow me and create that account along with me, one by one. Okay. So first of all, what is an Azure subscription? An Azure subscription is an account or an agreement between you and Microsoft, right? Based on that agreement, you'll be able to create services in Azure platform. So you need to have an Azure account, right? So how do you create an Azure account? Now let us learn about, the first thing we need to learn about is an Azure subscription. So if you see my screen here, I'm explaining what is an Azure subscription. An Azure subscription is like a subscription that you buy from Netflix, right? You watch movies, you watch films and all, you take a subscription of Amazon Prime, right? You take a subscription of Netflix. Similarly, you need to have a subscription of Azure. You need to have an Azure subscription to create and build and run your services on an Azure platform. Got it? So Microsoft Azure will not charge you any money for the subscription. There's no charges for the subscription, right? There's no cost for any subscription. What they charge will be the services that you're going to run in Azure platform. So you need to have an active subscription. Subscription is mandatory. Okay. There is no cost for a subscription. Okay. There are 3 types of subscription, or multiple. There are many more than that, but majorly we are going to focus on different types of subscription. So subscription is a free trial. You have a free trial subscription. You have an enterprise subscription. You have a pay-as-you-go subscription. Now this free trial subscription is something which you all can use, and that is available for 30 days, right? After 30 days, this will be deactive. It will be suspended. There is no charges associated with this. It's a free trial. Okay. The other one is enterprise subscription, which will be given by your companies to you. These are companies level subscription given to all of you. The third one is an individual subscription, which is called pay as you go, which means as and when you utilize, you pay accordingly, right? So you all will have to go with this free trial subscription. So what is there in the free trial? Let us learn. Azure free subscription. Azure free subscription is valid for 30 days, only 30 days, right? Within 30 days, you get a credit of 13,300 and you have to utilize within that credit limit. Now, this subscription allows you to create everything that you want, but it is limited. It can only be purchased using your credit card. Okay. You need to provide your ID proof, your email address and phone number, and accordingly, you have to give your credit card number, and then you can purchase your free trial subscription. They will not charge you anything within 30 days or after 30 days, right? Account will be suspended after 30 days. After 30 days, you can upgrade to pay-as-you-go account or enterprise account. As part of the free trial, some of the services are free for you for 12 months. So this is your Azure free subscription. Okay, they will not charge you anything after 30 days until unless you upgrade your account. So let us go ahead and see how do we create an Azure subscription account. Okay, so I'm going to create one account. So I'll come here and I'll go to google.com. Okay, so from here just type Azure free account. Okay, so when you type Azure free account, you will see, click on built-in Azure free account. And from here, what you can do is that you need to click on start free. You see here, you get a lot of free account, free services here, right? And in free, you get some of the services free for 12 months. In India, you get a credit of 13,300, and in US, you get a credit of $200, and you can utilize within that credit limit. So some of the services which you get in Azure basically are free, and you can utilize for 12 months also. So if you go down, you will see some of the services which are free for 12 months also, right? So if you see, you get a VM free for 12 months, you got a database free for 12 months. Some of the services are still free for 12 months. You can use them. Got it? So there are some popular services which are free for 12 months also. You can see all the free services. It will show you the list of all free services which you can. So these are some of your Azure free services which are available for you to create, right? And we are going to see how do we create an Azure free account here. So these are some of the services which are free in Azure environment. So let us go ahead and create an Azure free account. To create an Azure free account, click on Start Free. You can go to the link. I will share that link with all of you. So here you can provide your Outlook email. Always remember, do not use a Gmail. Do not use any other Yahoo account. Always create one Outlook account. Click on create one. Okay. Do not use Gmail or any other IDs. Please create one Outlook account. Click on create one and create a new Outlook account. So here I'm given one name. So let me copy this name, email address. So this is the email address which I've copied. ABC Pharma R Labs at outlook.com. So this is India at outlook.com. This is my email address. Okay. I will click on next and I have to give some password, right? I click on next. Just do a quick puzzle here. Now you see it is taking me to this place, right? This is my account, ABC Pharma India at outlook.com. This is my account. I'll note down this account, right? This is my account which I'm created. Within this account, I have to fill up my profile information here. So I will get 25 services for free and I'll get a credit of 13,300 for the first 30 days. And there are no automatic charges, right? After the credit is over, it will ask you to upgrade and your account will be suspended. Only if you want to upgrade, then only you can go ahead and upgrade your subscription from a free trial to pay as you go account. Okay, that is the next step. Or you can choose your enterprise account. So from here, you select your country. This is your profile. You have to fill 3 information, your profile and credit card information, and then sign up. It's very simple. So this is your country. Give your name, right? You give some email address. You give some phone number. I have to give some phone number. I'll provide some phone number and I'll give me an OTP. Let me configure that. So I've provided all the details here, right? And I'm moving on to the next step. Now you see here, I provided all my profile information. This is my profile information. And now after providing the profile information, it is taking me to the card. I need to provide all my details of the card. Okay, fine. Okay, make sure you follow what I'm saying. It is very, very important. You might miss some important points here. So this is your profile information. Then you come to the credit card information. So here you need to provide your card. So you see they accept only credit card. They will not use any debit card here. So debit card is not allowed. Okay. So you have to provide a card holder name, card number, name, card number, the expiry date, the CVV, the address, all the details you have to provide and sign up. So once you click on sign up, your account will be set up. Prerequisite is an Azure subscription. This one you all will create by Monday, right?
Okay.
Explained. And I have noted down the names who don't have credit card. You all know how to create an Azure account. Next, please install Visual Studio 2019. You can come here, Visual Studio downloads, Visual Studio 2019. Please download this community edition. This is free. Please download this 2019 and get this installed in your laptop and desktop. If you are working in your company, then please use a company's license Visual Studio. Okay, guys. So if you see here, this is your Visual Studio 2019. Please get it installed. This is first thing. Okay. Once you have Visual Studio, the next one we need to install is SQL Server. So you can download SQL Server Management Studio and install it. This is your SQL Server Management Studio. This one you can download and install. Right? You can come here. This is your SQL Server Management Studio. Clear? We may need this when we set up our SQL Server. We may have to create certain stuffs there. So for that, you may need this. Okay. Right? When you install SQL Server, along with that, it will give you, right? Management Studio will come. So when you install Visual Studio, you need to go to the Visual Studio and please enable or install all cloud features, Visual Studio. Okay. So when you go to the Visual Studio installer, it will ask you at what all things you want to install, right? So just click on modify and you can set up your Visual Studio installer with what you need. So you select all these things. Okay. So please select this checkbox, Azure development, this one. Okay. This one anyways is default. These two is required. So once you do that, your Visual Studio will be ready and then you are good to start with your development. Then you need SQL Server, as I told you, standard version. Then you need to have an admin rights in your laptop or desktop to install certain tools like Storage Explorer, PowerShell, certain plugins, right? You need to install certain Visual Studio plugins. I'll tell you what all plugins are there. Okay, so these are the prerequisite within which I've explained you all of them. And these ones we will install when we see the demo. Okay, so I've explained you all the prerequisite, what you need, right? And what will be the laptop or machine that you need to have? Bare minimum, it should be 8 GB RAM. Okay, so the laptop configuration can be please 2 CPU, 8 GB RAM. It's good. The recommended one. Okay, in case if you have anything lesser, that is also okay, but if you have this, it will run properly. Okay, this is your laptop and desktop configuration which is recommended. So we have discussed prerequisite, we have discussed about certain details. Now what we are going to discuss will be, we are going to start with the curriculum. So in this first chapter, we'll talk about introduction to cloud computing. We'll talk about what is Azure, what is the service model, deployment model, what all things are there. Let's go ahead and start with the topic number 1. That is the first module number 1 in the course. Right. Now the first thing is, what is cloud computing? Okay. So before cloud computing came in, there were a lot of challenges in the market, right? There were a lot of issues, there were a lot of challenges before cloud computing came in. Now, how cloud computing solved so many major problems, right? And why are we here today learning about cloud? Okay, so we need to understand that. So before cloud computing came in, there were a lot of challenges here, right? Now, what were the challenges? Before cloud came in, the companies had to invest a lot of money to buy bunch of servers, right? To launch their application. So if you see here, these companies had to invest a lot of money to buy a lot of servers and launch their application. Now they used to maintain all their servers in your environment, in their data center. So which means they need to manage or run their own data center. So this used to be their own data center, right? So they used to manage and run stuffs within their own company's data center, correct? Now, managing or running this data center is a cost to the company, right? So when the demand increases to an application, they need to increase the load of the server. When the demand decreases, they need to decrease the load of the server, right? So they have to spend good amount of dollars or money, right, or cost to make sure that their data center is running in making sure that it caters the need of their users, the developers, their administrators, right? And these systems which are running within their data center runs seamlessly. Okay, now let us take an example of some application. So if you take an example of Amazon.in. Now what is Amazon.in? Amazon.in or Amazon.com, right? So what is Amazon? Amazon is an online shopping company, right? Now for this company, if it needs to maintain its own data center, right, what it has to do? So this is let's say this is its Amazon is hosted in their own data center, right? Now there are many users who are going to access Amazon, yes or no? The thousands of users who are going to access. So when they access the Amazon website, right, now if the performance is not good, what you will do? You have to scale up some servers, you have to increase the CPU, you have to increase the RAM, you have to increase the processing capability, which means you need to buy more servers, right? So today they have 5,000 users. Tomorrow from 5,000 it can be 50,000. From 50,000 it can be 5 lakh. From 5 lakh it can be 5 crore. This can increase, right? So earlier you were maintaining the server for 5,000 users. Can you use the same server for 5 lakh? Earlier the companies had to invest lots and lots of money to run. See, if Amazon has to run their system or their online shopping platform, it had to manage a lot of servers, in their location. This is just an example. Okay. Now, similarly, you can take an example of SDFC Bank, right? SDFC Bank is one of the largest bank in India, right? Now, this company needs to maintain their own servers, own infrastructure. How much money they will spend, right? To provide all the services to the customer, right? Let's say some customers may be using a net banking solution. Some customer may be an agree. They might be applying for some loans. So they have different types of customers, right? Different types of businesses running, correct? So they run from different regions. Now, if this organization has to maintain their infrastructure and run this application, which means what all things they will do. This is their data center. So they need to take care of the data center. They need to make sure that their application will run properly. And for that, if the user increases, if the user base increases, they need to scale up the server, right? If the base decreases, they need to scale down the server. And if the server crashes, they need to recover the server from the backup. And they have to spend a lot of money in maintaining this overall data center infrastructure, right? So they need people, employees, they need maintenance team, they need hardware team, they need to buy hardware which is going to run here, they need to buy servers, right? They need connectivity, they need satellite configuration, lots and lots of things you need to do if you need to run your systems in your own data center, in your own server. So this is the personal data center, own data center, right? In your own data center, you take care of everything, correct? You understood what is a data center now? So within this data center, they have to take care of everything. If you see here, right? Now the company has to hire maintenance team to fix their problem, which means they have to take care of their infrastructure, right? So before cloud computing came in, if the traffic increases, decreases, there used to be a maintenance. It used to add up to lots and lots of complexities, and you have to pay a lot of bill, or you need to pay a lot of cost in managing and running this infrastructure. So before cloud computing came in, what were the major challenges? Scalability, which means you want to scale up or scale down based on your hardware demand, was a major challenge. You want to reduce your cost. High upfront cost was very, very high. Let's say, why cost? Because let's say if this is a bank, right? This is a SDFC bank. Now, if this bank is going to spend, let's say, annually 20 crores, just giving you an example, if it has to spend 20 crores only in IT, right? It is an extra cost to that company. What is the core business of HDFC Bank? What is the core business? Banking. So where it should focus? Is IT the core business of HDFC Bank? Yes, it needs an IT system to run. But is IT the core focus? No. IT is just to run their systems, their applications, their servers, right? So for them, it will be costly to take a building and maintain their own server, data center, everything will be very, very costly for them, right? So the bank, HDFC Bank, will have to focus on their own core services, core business. So they want to reduce their IT cost. This IT expenditure needs to be reduced. So how do you reduce your IT expenditure? We don't have to manage infrastructure. So we need to look for options where you don't want to manage this infrastructure. You want to run your systems without running them in their own infrastructure. You rather run your systems into somebody else's infrastructure, right? And that is where you need cloud. So cost is very, very important factor why companies are moving from their current data center to a cloud-based data center. The maintenance of the servers are very, very high. If you have your own servers, the maintenance of your servers as of today in your on-prem are extremely very, very high, right? Because if there is any problem in the hardware, or if there is any problem in this, let's say in any of your servers, you need to get somebody in from the maintenance team and fix it up, right? So server maintenance was a big challenge. Then comes a slow data recovery. So the data solutions or the data recovery process that you have on cloud required you to spend high amount of investment, right? So overall, if you see, and if you see scalability, which means as and when your demand increases or decreases, right? Before cloud computing, you have big challenge in scalability. You have big challenges in the cost to keep your cost low, your capital expenditure. You have big challenges in maintenance and your data solutions. So these were some of the core challenges. Now, after cloud computing came in, these problems were solved. Along with this, there are many other problems, but these are the most common problems that were solved when cloud computing came into the picture. It's all the problem of scalability, cost, maintenance, and data recovery, right? So what is cloud computing? Cloud computing basically means delivering or accessing services like your servers, storage, your network, your database, your software, right? You're going to access all these services not from your own data center, but you are going to access these services from somebody else's data center over the internet to provide a faster, good performance and economical deployment environment for your systems. So cloud computing basically means you're going to run your services from somebody else's data center and connect to those services using internet or intranet. Instead of running things on your own data center, you run stuffs from somebody else's data center and take that data center on a subscription basis. You pay for what you consume and you don't worry about the underlying hardware. You don't have to own any hardware. You got it? Now, giving you an example, if you want to watch a net movies as of today, what you do? You either take up an Amazon Prime subscription or you buy a Netflix subscription. Yes, this is what you do, right? So you don't go outside in the market. Do you buy DVDs as of today? Do you keep DVD machines at home? Do you watch movies using pen drive? You download it from the internet. Do you do that? Why? Why are you directly going and watching the movies directly from the service providers? Why do you do that? And what you do? You pay per month. You pay and you use, right? And how do you use? You have to connect over the same way. Here also, you are going to run your systems on cloud, and cloud is not a rocket science. It is just a data center, okay, operated and managed by various cloud provider. So how many cloud providers are there in the market? The major cloud service providers are AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and then you have IBM, and there are other cloud providers also in the market. It's not like only 4 are there.
Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cloud computing, then Intellipaat provides an advanced certification on cloud and DevOps by IIT Madras. This course is taught by industry experts and IIT Madras faculty. This course is designed to upskill and land your dream job. Now let's continue with the session.
And what do they do? They allow you to build, deploy, and run your systems from their data center and connect to that over an internet or intranet, so that you don't have to manage or run systems on your own infrastructure or on your own hardware. Now, what is the model that cloud computing works? Cloud computing works on a model called pay as you go, which means you pay for what you consume. It is like a electricity bill, right? So you consume, you pay for it. If you're not using it, you don't pay for it. So let's say if you create a database, you'll pay for the database. If you create a virtual machine, you pay for the VM. If you run a website, you pay for the website. If you're not running your website, you pay zero cost, right? It is like you use it and pay for it. So that is why cloud computing has so much of demand in the market, because it is based on the usage, right? Before I come to cloud computing models, I'll give you some scenario or use case. Now, if you see here, so before cloud computing came in, let's say there is a company called ABC Pharmaceutical. This is a company. Now this company, let's say this organization, right? Now let's say this organization, ABC Pharmaceutical, in their own, this is their data center. Let's say this is their own data center. It is running from California. Let's say this data center is from California. It's a company, ABC Pharma. It's a pharmaceutical company. Now this company has various systems like applications, database, the runtime software, servers, network, routers, switches, storage, security, VPN. So they have so many things which are running from their data center. This is their data center, right? and they have so many users who connect to their data center, current data center, which is running from California, and this is a physical office. Okay. Now, what are the costs that a company has to pay? This company has to pay for running these systems. Number one, it has to pay for the cost of the building. Yes. It has to pay electricity costs. It has to pay maintenance cost. It has to pay cost for the hardware. It has to pay cost for the hardware cost. It has to pay employee salary, people, and there are other operation costs also, right? So, which means this company has to invest a lot of money to run their systems, right? Which their users and their business or their vendors require. So they are spending, let's say for an example, if they are spending $50 billion per year to run their infrastructure from their own data center. Now, why do we move to cloud computing? Let us try and understand that. So if you come to this slide, so before cloud computing came in, all the users used to connect to your own infrastructure, right? After cloud computing came in, what happened? Let's say you are deploying things to an Azure environment. So the same pharmaceutical company is running this service to an East US region, in Azure region. So this is running from Azure. What they will do? They will run all these things. So running from their own data center, will run it from Azure platform. So they will run everything from Azure, these things, right? And these users who are connecting to their systems as of today will continue to connect. But how will they connect? They will connect over the internet or intranet. Got it? So if they are spending around 50 billion here, so they will spend almost less than that, which means they might spend around 20 to 25 billion, which means their cost is reduced by 50%, right? So here they don't have to rent office or premises to run their infrastructure. They don't have to pay any electricity cost. They don't need to maintain any server, right? Everything will be taken care by the cloud provider. And they will make sure that they give you hardware, which is very modernized hardware. And the performance will be far more better. You will have good security. You'll have good firewall. You'll have good backup, recovery, correct? So there are lots of features. You build systems which are modernized, right? You can connect to various other systems, correct? So the connectivity will be much better. You can create systems which are distributed system, which can be accessed globally. Let's say you are operating from California. Now let's say you are not into cloud. You're not into cloud. You want to open one more office in India. What will you do? So you're going to create one more office again in India. If you are not on cloud, let's say you create somewhere in Hyderabad. Let's say you're creating somewhere in Bangalore, right? If you are operating in US, you create one office. You're operating in India, you have to create one more office, right? And then what you do, you connect these two offices, correct? That's what you're going to do, right? If you're not on cloud, right? You connect using some connectivity. Still, you're going to spend, here you're spending 50 billion, here you might be spend around 45 billion. Which means you're going still, now tomorrow your business expands. You want to run your business from Dubai. Are you going to open up one more office in Dubai? Is this how you will operate? Is this the right way? Absolutely no, right? You can't keep, if you want to operate globally, you can't keep opening offices all over the world. I'm not talking about offices. Offices you can open. Sales office can be opened. I'm talking about data center. These are data center. You don't open multiple data centers, right? So a company, if it wants to operate across the globe, or let's say 4 or 5 countries, then it has to pay big bunch of money to manage its own data center. You see that? Whereas if you come to cloud, you have a choice to run your system from one region, and you can still run your systems from another region. You have choice to run your systems from different regions on cloud, and the cloud provider will connect between those two regions. You don't have to do any connectivity and stuffs, right? And most of the things will be set up by the cloud provider. And you have certain services which can allow you to run your system or stuffs from USA, and users can be from India. It does not matter. Now, let's say if you take an example of Amazon.com. This site is hosted in USA, right? But I can access from India, right? I can buy it from India also, right? How is it possible? And the performance is good. So if I want to buy something, the performance of the site, let's say if I want to buy some mobile, so the site's performance is good. It's not that bad. And the site is running from USA. You see, it runs from USA. You see, but the performance is good. I'm able to see all the content, right? Because it uses certain technologies on cloud, which will make it faster. Even if the site runs from one country, you can access the site from different countries all over the globe. So these are some of the features. You get high availability, you get load balancers, right? You get good performance, your content can be cached. So there are many other features of cloud computing. So what is cloud computing? As I mentioned, cloud computing is basically running your services, all the services from cloud providers data center environment, right? Without the need for owning your own hardware and running your system. The advantage is, what are the benefits of cloud computing? Cost, maintainability, scalability, security, performance. Yes, you pay for what you consume, right? And there are many other benefits, right? You can scale. You don't have to worry about hardware, right? You have low maintenance. This is your hardware independent, correct? You don't have to own your own data center to run stuff, right? So scalability, data recovery, security, performance, pay-as-you-go model, you pay for what you consume. Scalability or maintenance cost, hardware independent are some of the common. This cloud service provider give you certain things called availability. It gives you some SLA. They will give you a guaranteed SLA that your services will run 99.9% of the time. So that SLA and scalability, availability is also provided. And by doing all these things, what you are going to do? Not only you are going to achieve good performance for your system, but at the same time, your entire infrastructure is going to run with a low cost, low maintenance, right? And into a modernized platform that can be connected. You can modernize platform. Why? Because you can connect with various services. You can develop distributed systems, right? You can develop serverless systems. A lot of things are there, which you will learn in the upcoming days. Now, moving on, the next thing is we will learn about cloud computing models. So within cloud computing, they have two types of model. One is a service model and one is a deployment model. So in service model, you have infrastructure as a service, you have platform as a service, and you have software as a service. And in deployment model, you have public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. We'll discuss about these. We'll discuss about these both. Okay. So the first one is service model. Service model means Azure has various products. Let us see how many products Azure has and how these products are categorized into those service model. Okay. Before I come to service model and deployment model, anybody has any questions so far? Let's understand about cloud and its models and services. We'll learn about Azure. Then we'll come to load balancers. Okay. So we were discussing about cloud computing, right? Now we'll talk about various services that is there in Azure. Let's try and understand about those services. Now, if you see here, these are some of the products that Azure has, right? And if you come to the product section, right, these are products of Azure. Now, Azure is a cloud service environment, which is from a company called Microsoft. I hope all of you know about that, right? Now, the products, there are various products in Azure. You see, they have products in AI and machine learning. They have products in analytics, compute, container, database. Various products are there. So we look at my screen, you will find you have different types of products. We are not going to learn all the products here. Now, what are these products called? Now, these products are called resource provider. Now, please note these points carefully. These are all resource provider. Now, let's say, what is a compute? Compute is a resource provider. What is it? It's a resource provider. So inside compute, what all resources are there? Right? Inside compute, I can create API, website, functions, batch, so many things. I can create a virtual machine, a VM. So which means a compute, these are resource provider and these are the resources, or we call them as services. These are also called resource provider or service provider. So every time Microsoft will launch a new product, so this is a product of Microsoft. Every time Microsoft launches a new product, they will add one new resource provider. And that resource provider is these or these. There are different types of resources. And you also call them as a service provider and these are your services or resources. Is this clear, all of you? So within compute, you have these many resources or services you can create. So let's say if you want to create a VM, right, you have to get into a compute. So you'll create whatever you're going to create. So a virtual machine will be created within a compute resource provider. Is that clear? Right? So you have a resources or services, and then you have a resource provider or a service provider. So there are different types of products here, and or basically resource provider or service providers. Like one by one, you can see here. Now, if you look at networking, these are some of the stuffs here. Just go through it once. Okay, so these are, if you see here, these are some of your networking related services, various services which you see, right, which you can create in cloud and set up.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes.
Understood? So like these various products are there. We're not going to cover all of them. We'll cover some of the products. Now these products are categorized into 3 buckets. And the bucket is, so these products can be either within infrastructure, these products can be either within platform, or these products can be either within software as a service. So we will learn what is IaaS, we will learn what is PaaS, we will learn what is SaaS. So what is a service model? You understood what is a service model? Service model means the services that you have in Azure, the various services that you see are called service model. And that services will be created. You can create them either as an infrastructure, you can create them either as a platform, or you can create them as a software. Deployment model means how do you deploy these services? Now, let's say if I want to deploy a VM, how do I deploy? Let's take an example. So if I go to compute, or let's say, yeah, I'm in compute. Now, let's say I need to create one virtual machine. I'll create one VM, and within this VM, I want to run my web application. I want to run my website, .NET website. So what will you do? Right? You need to provision the VM in Azure, right? You need to install IaaS, correct? You need to develop the code and deploy that code, correct? So what are you doing? How are you going to deploy to Azure? And how will you connect? That is called deployment model, right? I'll give you a quick example. Now, if you see this diagram, so as I mentioned, you have 3 types of service model, right? I've told you about service model. These services that you see, right? These are bucketed into IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. This you are clear, right? On cloud. And Azure has somewhere around 250 plus unique services, right? And these services or service provider and resource provider, right? Within that, compute is one. Within compute, you have so many services, correct? Right? And within storage, you have so many services. Or you can call them as resources. Example is a virtual machine.
APIs.
Exactly. Understood, right? So these are different. So where does a compute belong? So a compute, some part of compute can be in IaaS, some part can be in PaaS, right? So if you go to the compute, now virtual machine belongs to infrastructure, right? But website belongs to platform. Now, what is an infrastructure as a service? Let's learn that. See, an infrastructure as a service means that you get full access to the server and your network where you are going to run your applications or system, which means you get full control of your server and your infrastructure on cloud. So the server will run on Azure platform, right? It will be running from Azure. You get full control over that server, and you can install anything within that server and run it as if it is your own server. Got it? The only difference is that instead of running your services from your own data center, you run it from a cloud provider's data center. That's the only thing. What I mean by that is, let's say this is our, let's say this is our network. So let's say you have a network, right? Now within a network, when you create a network, within a network, you have something called subnet. Let's say you have a network and a subnet which is defined, right? And then within your network and a subnet, what you run? You run something called a machine. So let's say you have one VM. Now this is your virtual machine. Now within this VM, what you're doing, you're running a website. Now let's say this is a .NET website. So you're running a .NET website from a VM within your network. And your user, this is a user, right? And this user connects to your website, right? It can connect using an internet or it can connect using an intranet. It does not matter. But let's say it is connecting through, okay, it is using a website URL. Now, in this case, now this network, the VM, and everything is running on some hardware, right? Yes or no? It runs on some hardware. Now, let's say it's your own infrastructure. It's a ABC Pharma company. This company is running its stuff here. This is a ABC Pharma organization, right? This is a ABC Pharma organization. It runs a website, okay, and users are connecting to its site. Now, this is a server. This is a VM, or we call it as a server. Understood? This is your app server. You know what is an app server? Let's say the website internally may connect to a DB. Within the database server, you might have another server, which is the DB server. So here, what is an infrastructure? What all things are in infrastructure here? And here you have access to the machine VM. Let's say this is a Windows VM, right? You have access to the machine, Windows VM, you have an application running. So you are having full control over this infrastructure. But here the problem is everything you are running within your own data center, right? This is not on cloud. The same thing, you run it from, now you see the magic. So now here you are running your systems in your on-premises infrastructure, and here you are running on cloud, right? Right here, everything is yours. So where it is running? It's running from, where's the US data center? It's in Virginia, right? Okay. So from where your VM will run now? And whose hardware is it? Where it is going to run? That means it's going to run from Azure East US Virginia data center. And that data center is a physical data center. It's a physical office. If you see, this East US data center is a physical office. Whose office is this? An Azure data center. So your VM, your website will run from which server? Where? It will run from Azure East US Virginia data center. This hardware on which you are going to run this VM and the site, and you want to create some network, will be from this Virginia data center. And then your users can either connect your services using internet or through intranet. It does not matter. They still continue to connect. Only what is the difference between these two? One is a physical location, the other one is a physical location, the other is a location of the cloud provider. So in infrastructure as a service, what happens? You are going to run your, here also you are running a website. Here also you are running a website. But the only difference is that you're going to run your website in a cloud provider's environment. You get full control over this server. You can install what you want to install within that server. Let's say if you want to run a .NET site, what all you need to install within this. If I want to install a .NET site, what all I need to do? So you are gaining full control on the server and you choose whatever you want to do within that server. Okay. So this is called infrastructure as a service. So let us see what does an infrastructure service means. Infrastructure as a service means your network or stuffs that you run will run on an Azure environment, and you get everything will run within Azure hardware or Azure data center, right? Whatever you're going to run, and you get full control to run your stuffs there within a VM. So whenever you talk about IaaS, the first thing you need to know is that you need to have a network. So within an IaaS, what you need to have? You need to create a network, define your subnet, create a machine, create your website and database, and users will then connect to your web applications. So to run this web application, what you do? You have to install and do so many things. You install IaaS, install DB, install runtime, deploy a framework code, create virtual directory, install plugins, run services, create drivers, and test the app. Now this is called infrastructure as a service. Now what is platform as a service? Platform as a service means there is no need for server. There's nothing called server here. Everything you can directly create on Azure. You can directly create a website. You have limited options here, which means now what is the problem with this approach? You have to let this point you have to see. Here you have to do the virtual machine maintenance, right? Regular patching, you have to do monitoring of the website. You are going to manage the VM, right? See, the VM will run within Azure network, but you have to take care of the firewall. You have to take care of high availability. I'm just telling you. So which means if you see here, this virtual machine and your website, anyway, it's a .NET site, is running on the VM. You need to take care of your network. You have to take care of your machine. You have to do regular patching. You have to do maintenance of your machines, right? Maintenance means you have to make sure that the CPU is high. CPU should not be less than 2% or 10%. Your application will not work, right? You have to take care of the security. You have to take care of the performance, and you need to take care of any attacks. So you have to take care of everything here, which means the only difference is that your application runs from infrastructure as a service. It's independent of your hardware. It runs on somebody else's hardware, but infrastructure you need to take care. Now, what is platform as a service? In platform as a service, if you see, you directly create an application, you create your DB and you run. So in platform as a service, you focus on your application. Directly you can create a web application. So here, if you see, if you go, you can directly create a website. Can you see? There are two ways to run your website. One, you can run your website within your VM. So you can run your .NET website here. This is one option. The other one, you can run your .NET website into a web application directly. In web application, when you run in a web application, there is no VM, there is no VNet, there is no network, right? Our focus is only on the website, right? So we don't worry about the network. We don't worry about the VM. We don't worry about the maintenance. We don't worry about the patching, correct? We can directly, quickly create a website and run the website directly on Azure platform. This is called serverless platform. And here what you need to do, you need to create a VM, you need to create a VNet, network, you need to find a subnet, create a website, run the website, set up IaaS, everything you have to take care. But here, nothing. You go, choose the website, select the framework, your runtime, your OS will be taken care by the cloud provider. So here, what you do, you don't have to create any VNet. You don't have to create any subnet, no VM. You only select which OS you want. You don't have to install any IaaS server. You don't have to install any runtime. You only select what runtime you need. You will only select what you need. And the platform will take care of what your application will run. There's no concept of VM. You don't have to log into the VM. You get no control here. There's no control on to log into the VM. Now, the advantage of running systems on PaaS is you don't have to worry about maintenance, no patching. Performance, you have to take care. Security monitoring, anyway, you'll have to do. But you are independent of the total hardware. It's a serverless platform. Now, let's say I only have my web application. You have an Azure subscription, then you go create a website. You only pay for the site, right? Are you paying for the VM? Are you paying for the website? Are you paying for the network? No, right? Do you need to do a maintenance? Do you need to do a patching every, let's say whenever Microsoft will launch some patches, will you have to install the patch? Not required. It's a serverless platform. And the last one is software as a service. What do you mean by SaaS? In software as a service, what happens is, in a SaaS, instead of delivering a software and installing a software in your laptop or a desktop, you can directly access the software, right, from the internet and consume it and use it without the need of installing or downloading the software. Okay, a software as a service means delivering a whole software, okay, without the need of installing or downloading that software to your laptop or a desktop. Now, what are the most common SaaS services that you see? Have you heard about Google Drive, OneDrive? You are using Google Drive, you are using OneDrive, you are using Office 365, SharePoint Online. These are all examples of SaaS. In software as a service, you deliver an end software or a product The software can be directly used by the users, okay, without the need of installing them. And who takes care of the entire software? Azure. Okay. So if you see this example in a software as a service, right? Now there is a company, let's say a company who has its own software. It will push the software to Azure, and directly from Azure, you can reuse that software. The license, the application, the data, infrastructure, hardware, everything will be taken care of by the cloud provider. Let me give you an example. So you can come to Azure Marketplace, and from here you can purchase or buy any software, right? Let us see, click on shop now. Let's say I want to buy some networking product. I'll click on networking, and let's say I want to buy this F5 advanced firewall. So I will click on F5. So this is an F5 is one product. Now if I go to this company, F5 is one company, right? F5 network. You see F5 network is one company, correct? F5.com. Now they have various products here. Now this company has this product or a software, advanced WAF, right? This is their product, correct? This is a product of which company? Their software, yes. What this software will do, if you use this software in your systems, it will take care of. Now this software, they can sell it directly from their website, f5.com, or they can sell using a SaaS model, software as a service, which means what they do, they will go to Azure, they will tell to Azure, hey, Microsoft Azure, I want to sell this product or my software, right? Can you help me selling this product and managing this product in your marketplace? So it will come to Azure, and you see this product, you can buy it from Azure also.
Just a quick info guys, if you want to make a career in cloud computing, then Intellipaat provides an advanced certification on cloud and DevOps by IIT Madras. This course is taught by industry experts and IIT Madras faculty. This course is designed to upskill and land your dream job. Now let's continue with the session.
So you can directly come to Azure and click on get it now and use it in Azure platform directly. Although this is a software or a product of this company, you can still use it. So this is a software. You can deploy that product as a SaaS, and that can be completely, you deploy that into cloud, your product, and everybody else can use that software without the need of installing that software into their laptop or a PC. And we will now understand about deployment model, public, private, and hybrid. Now, there are three types of deployment model, okay? The first one is public. So in a public cloud, what happens is the computing service, or basically the cloud provider's data center, will be shared, or the infrastructure will be shared, right? So this is called public cloud, which means you, me, anybody, we can buy our own subscription and we can deploy to our own subscription. That is called public cloud, right? So in public cloud, you get a shared access to your services and you can deploy anything within that public cloud. Fine. So in a private cloud, what happens is private cloud is dedicated to a single organization. Okay. So an organization can have their own private cloud. The private cloud setup can be owned by an organization, or it can be rented by a cloud provider. So private cloud means you are exclusively going to have your own dedicated organizational cloud environment. Public cloud means anybody can deploy to Azure or AWS or GCP depending on their subscription. Correct? This is called public cloud. Private cloud means it is dedicated for a single organization. Okay? And if you see this example, if you see this bus, right? This bus is an example of public cloud, whereas car is an example of private cloud, because this car is owned by a single individual, you see. And hybrid cloud refers to a computing model where it will combine both public cloud and private cloud together. Now, let me give you some scenario. So public cloud means, you see, in a public cloud, what happens, you see, you have, let's say, I'm having one subscription. You are also having one subscription. This guy is also having one subscription. We all have our own Azure subscription. But when we deploy, Where are you deploying? I'm choosing East US. So what is common here? What is common here? The location is East US, right? And what is happening? This guy is also able to deploy using his own subscription to East US. This guy also is able to deploy to East US region. Now, what is getting shared here? The data center is getting shared, right? So this is called public cloud. Are you using your own data center to deploy? No, you are using whose data center? So you're using Azure data center and you're deploying your services to cloud. But the data center is an Azure data center and everyone can use. So let's say if I buy a subscription, if I have a subscription, I can deploy. If you buy a subscription, you can deploy. So you can also choose US data center. I can also choose US data center. So this is called public cloud. Now, what is private cloud? A private cloud is something which is dedicated to a single organization, right? One company having their own private cloud. A private cloud cannot be shared, right? I have my subscription, only I am going to use my private cloud. And the last one is hybrid cloud. In a hybrid cloud, you have a combination of public, private, or on-prem. You see, this is a public cloud. I'm deploying my website in the public cloud, but my database is in private cloud. And how I'm connecting, I'm using a VPN. So this is a hybrid cloud. Here, this is a public cloud. This is a private cloud. Here, and they are connecting to each other, right? So the application communicates to the website. So it cannot connect directly. It needs a VPN to connect. A hybrid cloud is a combination of public and private. Okay, this is all about public, private, and hybrid cloud. So moving on. Now, what is Microsoft Azure? As I mentioned, Microsoft Azure is a cloud provider which is owned by a company called Microsoft, and it provides various services which we saw, such as compute, network, storage, etc., etc., etc. I have shown you close to around 200 plus services that is available in Azure, right? We saw that yesterday. What are the benefits of or basic facts of Microsoft Azure? Azure was launched in 2010. It is widely recognized by Fortune 500 companies, and more than 90% of the organization use Azure. It is free to get started, but you can convert it to pay as you go. It supports various platforms, right? It supports C#, Node, Java, .NET, Python, PHP, Ruby. It supports all the programming language. Azure is available in how many data centers? It's available in 54 regions in the world. So these are some facts of Azure. If you see, Azure has more global regions. In total, they have 54 regions worldwide, and Azure operates in 140 countries. So if you see, this is your India. In India, it has 3 regions. So this is West India. This is Central India. This is South India. So these are the 3 regions it operates in India. Which geography does it belong? It belongs to Asia Pacific, right? Within Asia Pacific, it is in India. So when you create services in Azure platform, you don't select the geography, right? You don't select the country. What you select is a region. So you select a region. So what are these called? These are regions. These are your Azure region. So how many regions Azure has? So if you calculate all of them, there are 54 regions. How many countries it operates? 140 countries. So just look at the screen. So this is India. This is UAE. This is Singapore, China, Japan, Korea, China North, Australia, Southeast Asia, South Africa, there's some country here, USA, complete US, right? So you can choose, the benefits are you can choose to deploy in any data center. And these data centers are interconnected with each other. So you're talking about latency. We call it as, what do you call? Now, what we call this as latency. So users, let's say what might happen, let's say the user is in India, but let's say a website is running from USA, right? Then this user tries to connect to this website. User is in India, he's in India, but he tries to connect to the website in US. It will be slow. And that slowness is called latency. We call it as latency. So what should you do? You should always build systems with high latency or low latency. So this is your region where you're deploying, and this is your physical data center where it runs. So it will depend which region you're going to select, which location you're going to deploy, and what is the latency. Okay, so let's move on. Now this is about region. So what are the various services of Azure? We understood about region, we understood about data center, right? We understood about latency, correct? And how many regions Azure operates. Next is what are the services of Azure? Azure has many services, right? So if you come here and see, so Azure has various products here, you see, right? So some of the products which are there, like you have a product like compute. You see, this is compute, right? Compute, network, storage, website. These are some of the common services. And if you go inside compute, so what is this called? These are all resource provider. We call them as compute is a resource provider or a service provider. And what is this? This is a service or a resource. So Azure has various types of services, right? So these services, right? Now, as I told you, there are different types of services. Like we have compute, network, storage, database. Differences. In a compute, you have some of the services like VM, functions, website, container. We'll learn some of them. We'll understand about these. Now, again, moving on, you have networking service. In networking, you have virtual network, load balancer, gateway, domain name, content delivery network. These are networking services, right? Then you have storage, like blob, file, table, queue. These are your storage services, right? Then you have a database like SQL Server, Cosmos DB, Data Factory, Data Lake. These are all database related services. Okay, so there are different types of services. We'll learn about these services one by one. Okay, guys. So now the next thing is that we learn about deployment model, we learn about service model, we understood about data center, we learned about regions. Next, what? Okay, next today, what we are going to do, we are going to do some hands-on. Okay, for that, I want all of you to create a Microsoft Azure account or subscription, right? Now we are going to start with the subscription. So after subscription, I will show you a sample demo on IaaS and PaaS, and I will show you and deploy a simple .NET application. That's what we will do. So we are on this point now, okay? So after this, what demo I'm going to show you, right? So if you see this diagram, as I told you, you have various region, geography, India, region, 3 regions, and you have different data centers. This is clear, right? We discuss about it, right? So next, I'm going to show you a demo on how to create service in Azure portal. I'll see a demo on IaaS and PaaS. This will be our demo. And here in the IaaS and PaaS, I'll deploy a simple deploy sample.net site and host in Azure. This will be what I'm going to show you in the demo. These are the demos that I have now. Okay, but before I come with the demo, the first thing is Azure account. Now, if you see this architecture, right? Now, first of all, before you create anything on Azure platform, so first of all, understand the first thing that you need to create before you deploy. What you need to do, first of all, what you need to do, you need to create one subscription. What you need to have? You need to have one Azure subscription. This is clear, right? So this is your cloud. This is the first thing. You all will need one Azure subscription. That is the first part. Okay, fine. Now, subscription, you're all clear. You can have any subscription, but right now you're talking about free trial. Once you have an Azure subscription, what you need to do next? Next, you need to create something called resource group. Okay, so create a resource group. You create something called resource group. So what is a resource group? A resource group is a logical container which will hold all your resources together into Azure, right? So what you need? You need one subscription, active subscription. You need one resource group. So what is a resource group? A resource group is a logical container which will hold all your resources together. So here you deploy your Azure resources. Clear? And the reason you create resource group is because everything that you see gets deployed within your Azure resource group. And that is because there is an API, right? Below this, there is an API which will do all the deployment. Okay, whenever you are doing a deployment, there is an API. It is called an ARM API. There is an ARM API. Okay, so as a user, when you submit a deployment, it goes to the API. The API then goes and deploys to the resource group. Clear? Now, because the architecture is developed in such a way, you need to use one resource group, and within the resource group, you need to deploy your resources. Now, your resources can be anything. Inside this, you create your resources, right? Now, what will be the resources? Now, the first resource, that is, or you call it as a resource, or you call it as a service. So the first service will be, I'm going to create one network. Now, I'm talking about IaaS. I'm going to show you a demo on, right? So infrastructure, what you need? You need a network, right? So you're going to create one. These are your resources. Now, within these resources and services, what you're going to create? You're going to create one network. Now, this is your network. We create a virtual network. Within this network, what I'm going to provision? I'm going to provision one subnet. I'm going to provision one subnet. Within this subnet, what I'm going to provision? I'm going to create one VM. And within this virtual machine, what I will deploy? I will host one simple .NET website. And users are going to access my website, right, which is hosted on cloud. Okay, so what we are trying to do here, now look at this diagram properly. Right, here we are creating one subscription. First, you need to have an active subscription. Then you create a resource group. Then within the resource group, you create a network. Within the network, you define a subnet, and then you create a VM, Windows VM, right? And then you deploy a site. This is what we discussed, right? Okay. Now, so I'm going to my Azure account. I will sign in. Okay, so these are Azure account. Right now, within this Azure account, I'm going to create one resource group, and within the resource group, we'll create one services. How do you create an Azure deployment related setup? So where we understood that we need a subscription resource group, and then we need to deploy our resources or services within an Azure environment, right? So first of all, let's go ahead and create one resource group, and then we'll deploy a certain network. Then we'll create some subnets and machines within that particular VM, and then we'll access the VM and deploy one .NET site. So to do that, let us come to our Azure environment. So this is my Azure portal. Now, if you see in this portal, this is your search bar, right? Okay, this is your search bar. You can search for all your resources here. Now, this is your Cloud Shell, right? This is your directory. This is your notification. This is your settings. This is your help and support. This is your account. Okay, and these are some of your common Azure services. Okay, and here you can tag your favorites, and you can see your dashboard. Okay, so this is typically how a Microsoft Azure deployment portal looks like. This is a Microsoft Azure deployment portal, right? You can use this portal to deploy your services to an Azure environment. What we need to do next is, as I mentioned, we have an active subscription. So what we'll do, we'll click on resource group. So the first thing that we need to create is a resource group. Okay, so let us go ahead and create one resource group from here. Click on create a resource group. Now, so to create a resource group, you need to select the subscription. This is my subscription, the name of the resource group now, and the region, right? So what is a resource group? A resource group is a container that will hold all your related resources together and group them into a single resource. You can decide what all services you want to run within your particular resource group. It will help you to do a grouping. So how do you create a resource group? Give the name of the resource group. How do you define the name? So to give the name, follow the Azure naming convention. You need to follow the Azure naming convention, right? So in the naming convention, if you see, so what is the naming convention for a website or for a, so you can see that. So you see, this is how the naming convention will be, right? So this is your resource group, this is your Azure environment, this is your resource group, and then you have a resource, right? Everything you are going to create within the resource group. Now, what is the naming convention? So if you're creating a resource group, you have to give the name like this. It's an example, okay? So this is a name. RG resource group, marketing SharePoint. So what are we going to deploy? Instead of say, we'll say demo website, dev environment. Now, what does it define? It defines that this is a resource group. I'm hosting a demo site. This is for a dev environment, right? And this is the code. Understood? So this is a typical naming convention. So you can see a naming convention. You can give any name, but you have to follow a naming convention. Then you select your data center region where you want to deploy. So you have regions, East US, various regions are there. You see, you choose which region you want to deploy. So if I am choosing Central India, where is Central India? In Asia Pacific, right? Now, where will my resource group be created? In Central India. In whose data center? In Azure data center. Inside this subscription, right? And within this resource group. Fine. So I've created one subscription and defined one resource group and selected one region. Now, next, when you create a resource group, you can give something tag. Not only a resource group, or when you create a resource, it asks you for a tagging. Tags are not mandatory. This is optional. So what does a tags do? Tags usually help you to organize your resources. A tags contain a key and a value pair. And using this key and a value pair, you can organize your resources accordingly. So you can give like environment dev 001. So this is your tag, right? So whatever I'm building for a dev environment. Okay, a tag represents your key value pair, and using a tag, you can organize your resources together in a much easier way. So when you see a final bill invoice, you can easily figure out that for a dev environment, these all services I've created. So it will help you to do a key and value pair mapping, and you can organize your resources and review a bill also. Now this, I'm going to create one resource group. Now there is something, somebody did a validation, right? This is a validation being done. Who did this validation? Who does the validation? There is an API called Azure Resource Manager API. Internal API. This API will do a validation, and it will do entire validation, and it will validate. So these are my inputs. And I'm going to create these services. So the first thing I'm going to create will be, now you see I'm submitting. A resource group is created, right? So this is my resource group where it is created in Central India. Got it? Step number 1 done, right? Subscription I already have, right? What is my subscription? This is my subscription. This is also, which means this is active, right? And what I need to create next? We need to create a network to deploy our machines, right? So I will go ahead, and this is my resource group. Now if you see the resource group is completely empty. There are no resources. There are no resources at all, right? So what you will do? You will create a virtual network. So I'll create one virtual network. Just type virtual network. So this is my virtual network. I'm creating one network. So what is this network? Because of this virtual network, you can create your infrastructure. By default, without a virtual network, you cannot run any infrastructure on cloud platform. Virtual network is a building block of your infrastructure, and VNet is required to build, deploy, and run your infrastructure. Clear? So here, when I'm creating a virtual network, I have to select my subscription and resource group, which I created earlier. Got it? Right? I have to give the name of the network, right? So what is my network name? So I'll select the name here. I can give any name. So this is my naming convention here, right? I'm going to create it for virtual network dev. So if you see here, this is my resource group. This is my subscription resource group. This is my name of the virtual network. This is the region where I'm going to deploy the virtual network. See, the region of the resource group is Central India, and I'm going to deploy the resource also in the same region. So select Central India. This is my virtual network name. Next, I need to give the IP address, right? So what is the IP address? I have to define a virtual network IP address. Clear? Now, this is the IP address of my VM, VNet, right? 10.0.0.16. So what is this IP address? This IP address is called class interdomain routing. What does it mean? It means that how many VMs you can create. So you have three types of classes: class A, class B, and class C, right? IP address. Now, you see what is the IP address? And what is this? This is called mask, right? So what is the mask? /16. So this is total number of VMs I can create in this IP address within this network, right? So my network, whichever network I'm going to provision, inside that network, this is the number of hosts that I can create.
Just a quick info guys, if you want to make a career in cloud computing, then Intellipaat provides an advanced certification on cloud and DevOps by IIT Madras. This course is taught by industry experts and IIT Madras faculty. This course is designed to upskill and land your dream job. Now let's continue with the session.
So the next one is a subnet, right? Now in subnet, I can choose /224, which means I'm creating one subnet. This is my subnet, default subnet. Subnet 1. I can create multiple subnet. Inside these subnet /24 equal to how many? I can create 256. Got it? So how many hosts I can run here? Inside one subnet. Here I can run 256 machine. So if you see here, the total number of addresses that I have is my virtual network address. It's the host, total number of address. Whereas I'm creating one subnet. Within this subnet, I can create 256 machines. But again, the point is that in Azure, what happens is out of 256 IP address, right? 5 IP address are reserved. These are reserved in one subnet, right? So that means 256 minus 5 is how much? 251. How many VMs you can create in one subnet now? 251. Understood? 5 IP addresses are reserved for Azure for internal routing. Clear? So you can choose any IP address, you can choose any subnet, but you need to have one network and one subnet defined. You should have one network, one subnet mandatory for deploying or creating a VM. Then you have this many VMs you have to create. I will go ahead and create one VM here. To create a VM, I need to have one network, one subnet, mandatory. Clear? Right. Everything in the world has an IP address, right? Every element will have an IP address. So host means in a network, you have these many IP address. Now these IP address you can associate with a VM or you can associate with other things also. But total number of IP address that you get for a network is this much for /16. Now this process is called class interdomain routing. Now this I have mentioned in the prerequisite also. So you go to YouTube and learn more about CIDR. Okay, can you take a note of that? Okay, for now this much is enough. Now if I choose some other IP address, let's say if I choose /16, right? If I choose /20, which means I can create 4,000 hosts, right? So you can choose how many hosts you need, right? How many hosts you need, which means how many IP address you need. It will depend on your requirement. You can choose any IP range. Okay. For my network, I'm choosing /16 and this is my subnet. I'll call this as default subnet, or I will call this as web subnet. I'll call this as web subnet, and inside this is my subnet IP. Can you see here? And how many VMs are reserved? 5, right? And how many VM I can create? 251 VM in this subnet. Understood? This has 65,536 hosts. Here, 256 minus how many is left out? 65,280 something. 65,280.
Yes.
Is the left out address, which I can utilize and I can use multiple subnets. Got it? Now those address can be associated with a VM, or it can be with a website, or it can be any other system. It is, but you are allowed to utilize these many hosts or addresses. Okay, I'll click on save. This is my web subnet. This is my IP address range. Now I filled my IP address of my network. Now this is my IP address. Okay, now I'll have subnet. What is my subnet IP address? Right? And then I'm going to create a virtual machine. Next is security. Now, this network that you are creating, this virtual network, right? This virtual network, it has to be secured, right? Right? So you can secure. So directly the request is coming to the website. That's not good, right? So you're going to secure this network. How will you secure this network? Right? You can have a firewall. You can create some firewall here. You can add some firewall, and this firewall will protect your, it will protect your network. Got it? So the request will go via firewall to the subnet and to the VM and then to the website. Understood? So now here, this is about network security. So you can enable firewall. That is one option to secure the network. Second, you can enable some protection like DDoS protection. DDoS is an extra level of protection which will protect your machine from some security threats. So you can protect your network with DDoS protection. Got it? That is another level of security. Got it? Then you can enable a Bayesian host. Now there is a, how do you connect to the VM or to the machines? So you can connect to the VM using Bayesian host. Using Bayesian host, what it will do? It will allow you to connect to your VM using secured RDP and SSH. So for the VM, you can enable Bayesian host. And what will happen? You can log into the VM using certificates. Security. Understood? So firewall, DDoS protection, and Bayesian are related to your security of your network and the machines. Now these services are for the security of your network, okay, fire, and for your machines. Next, moving on to the tag. I'm selecting the tag which I've created. The earlier one, you see, I'm going to tag all the resources to my key value pair so that I know what all. Now here, this is my network name, right? Virtual network name, location, this is my resource group, this is my subscription, this is the IP address, this is my subnet, this is my environment, this is a protection plan. By default, DDoS plan is enabled, basic one is enabled, your basic plan. Bayesian host, we haven't enabled, and firewall, we haven't enabled, so I'll remove it. Got it? So next, the validation is done. Next, I will click on create. It will now provision a network. Now I'm doing a deployment. Deployment is in progress. It's deploying within this resource group, right? And the network will be ready. So once the virtual network will be created, so the network is created. Can you see here? You see the network is ready. Where is my network created? In Central India. So this is my virtual network. Next, I'm going to create a virtual machine. So network once done. So when I get into the network, this is my virtual network, right? I can see this is my address, right? This is my address space. So how many I will have, this is my address range. Can you see here? Now you will understand better. Can you see? This is my, within this address range, I can create my services. But what you do, you divide this host number of IP address, you divide it into subnet. So you create smaller subnet. A subnet is a logical segmentation, right? Why do you do that? You create smaller network so that it will be easy for you to manage. Understood? So this is one small subnet for you, right? And this is easy for you to manage. So this is a big network, right? Yeah, this is a small subnet. You can manage 251 VMs, right? IP address. Don't say VMs, you say available IPs. Why it is not showing 256? Now this is your firewall, this is your protection. You can enable all these things. Now this is my connected device. There is no VM. I will deploy a VM. It will be shown here. The VM will have the IP address and with subnet. And that IP address will be from where? It will be from the same VNet. So to create a VM, what I'll do, click on create a resource. I will select, so I can directly choose this image. So these are all images which are readily available. So I can create a Linux image, VM, or I can create Windows. So I'm choosing a Windows image, VM image. So I will click on this. Okay. And now after this, what you see, you have to fill up the basic information of the VM, the disk, the networking, the management, the advanced, the tags, and then create. So all these things you need to fill for the VM. You remember networking we have already created, right? Certain networking, right? So what we created a virtual network. We created a subnet. Why do you need these two? Because you have to define it when you create a VM. Understood? Yeah. And we create a resource group also, right? because I have to select a resource group here, right? I need a subscription. So if you see here in this screen, so you can create a VM right now. So to create a virtual machine, what all we need to do, we need to fill the basic information. So these are resource group, right? We have to give the name of the VM. VM name also you can select it from here. You can choose the name of the virtual machine, right? So you can give any name, right? What we are going to create, VM. So what we are going to deploy, VM dev, VM website dev 001. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are virtual machine name. This is the resource group. This is a subscription. This is my location. Now this is my image, right? I'm using a Windows image for creating a VM. Got it? So there are different images. I'm using a Windows image. It will create Windows VM. Now this is my size of the VM. I have different sizes of the virtual machine, right? So this is one size. This is other size. This is the CPU. This is the RAM. This is the disk. This is the maximum input output per second of the disk. This is the storage, right? This is my cost per month. So if I'm going to create this virtual machine, this will cost me 10,360 rupees per month. And this has 2 core CPU, 8 GB RAM, 4 disk, and this is the maximum input output per second. And it has a temporary storage of 16 GB. Okay. So I can choose different sizes. So I can create the virtual machine on demand. I can scale up or scale down at any point of time. Clear? So this is my VM size. Okay. So I will select this size. And now I'm going to give the username and password. Right? I'll give the password. Then how you want to connect to the VM? Do you want to connect to the VM over? There are different protocols, right? You want to connect to the VM over RDP. You want to connect to the VM over HTTP, or you want to connect to the VM over HTTPS. How you want to connect? So to connect to an RDP, what is the port number? To connect to HTTP, what is the port number? To connect to HTTPS, what is the port number? So you need to open all these ports, right? And make sure that these ports are opened. And you have to get these ports open for the, where do you open? You open these ports in a subnet. Got it? Now you can open these ports at a VM level also. You can open at a subnet level also, right? So if you open this port at a VM level, then these ports will only be opened within your virtual machine. Got it? Now I'm opening all these ports. I'm going to open within my virtual machine, right? I have opened these ports, and because these ports are opened, I will be able to connect over this port. So how do I connect? I will connect over, as a user, I will access over the public IP, and I will connect using RDP. So for public IP RDP, I need to open this 3389. Got it? And for accessing the website, I need to open which port? Got it? So the first one is for the RDP for accessing the VM. I will do a remote desktop. RDP is a remote desktop. I'll do a remote desktop to log into the VM, and I will use HTTPS URL, website URL to access the website. So all 3 ports needs to be open to this machine. So this part will open all the required ports. So I'm opening all these ports. So all the inbound ports to my VM, I'm opening it up. So this first part is done. Now, if you already have a license of your on-prem virtual machine license of Windows, then you will get a discount of 49%. So you see the cost is 10,360, right? Look at the cost, right? And if you go down slowly, I'll change it and select this option. When I select this option, what is the cost now? You see? So why the cost is getting reduced? Now the cost is 5522 for the VM per month, because I have mentioned that I already have a license of my Windows at on-prem, and I will reuse the same license. So this is called bring your own license to cloud. You can reuse your existing licenses, and you can create your servers and run your systems. So if you select this option, which means you already have a license, you have an existing Windows Server license, and you are using that license. In my case, I don't have, so the cost is this much per month. Moving on to the next section, this is disk. So I'm going to create a virtual machine disk. I'll go with a standard disk. Now you see this option, right? It will create this as C drive. This is my C drive. It will create a C drive. That's my OS disk, right? Okay. Then this data disk is my other drives in the machine. Other disk like F, G, H, I, understood? So C drive is my default disk. Now this default disk will be encrypted. So when it creates a VM, it will create a OS disk. That's my C drive. So it will create a C drive, and that C drive will be encrypted. Guys, just go through it. So this is my C drive disk, and this is completely encrypted. So the advantage of encryption is it will make sure that our disk is protected. Okay, and I'm using a standard disk, which is of low cost. This will create a disk of my VM. Next, after disk, I will set up my networking. So this was the virtual network which I created before. Yes. This was the subnet. Yes. Same subnet, right? And how do you connect to the VM? I want to connect over the public IP, right? So I will create one new public IP, create new. So this is my public IP. I'm creating one public IP and I'm choosing a static IP. If you choose static IP, every time you reboot, your VM will not change the IP address. It will remain the same. The IP remains the same. If you choose dynamic IP address, every time you reboot, your IP address will vary. Right? So you have two types of IP address, basic and standard. Okay? You can choose any one of them. Okay? So now you have selected your network. You have defined your subnet. You create one IP address. Now you have opened certain ports. Right? So you have done most of the things in the networking level, right? So this is your network, this is your subnets, this is your public IP address, this is your ports. You have opened everything, correct? Next, what do you want? Do you want to have a load balancer? We'll discuss about this later. And I've opened some ports. So this is my networking. I've configured my networking. And how do I connect? I'll connect over the public IP. I'll show you. Now next, moving on. My subscription is secured using a Azure Security Center plan. So which means my subscription is secured using this plan. So I don't have to worry about my security of my subscription, right? It is secured using this plan. Clear? Next, when the VM is loading, do you want to store the logs of the VM, the boot logs, right? So you can mention the logs of the VM when the VM is loading. That is called boot logs. Okay, clear this part? So whenever the VM loads, it will give you the log. So you can enable the logs. It is called boot logs. You can see the booting of the VM. Then there are other things in the management. In management, you can set up your logs. You can connect to your Active Directory. You can shut down, auto shut down the VM. So you can choose this option every day at 7 p.m. in India time zone. It will shut down the VM and send me an email. So that means from morning 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. the developer will work. Exactly at 7 p.m. it will shut down the machine. Right? So that it will save my cost. So this is a feature. So I don't want that wrong. Then I can enable backup of my VM. I can choose to take the backup of this virtual machine. Complete backup. Right? I can choose to set up a high availability recovery of this machine. What will happen if this machine fails? Or if this region fails? Currently we are deploying in which region? Central India, right? What if Central India region, what will happen? So that means you need to deploy everything to another region like West India, right? So that is called site recovery. So site recovery, backup, auto shutdown, these are some extra features of your VM. Now, the last one is
Just a quick info guys, if you want to make a career in cloud computing, then Intellipaat provides an advanced certification on cloud and DevOps by IIT Madras. This course is taught by industry experts and IIT Madras faculty. This course is designed to upskill and land your dream job. Now let's continue with the session.
Once the VM is provisioned, it is running, Microsoft launches some update, right? Patching. Now, do you want the patching to be automatic or manual patching? You can choose either automatic patching, okay, or you can choose manual patching. So for your dev environment, you can go with automated, but for your production environment, you have to go with manual patching, okay? Because sometimes when you install patches, it might bring down your system also. Clear? So what are patches? Patches are nothing but your security or your infrastructure or your network related update of your OS. Is the OS update that will be pushed by Microsoft. So you are going to configure all these things here. Then you go to advanced. Now in the advanced section, there is something called extension. In the extension, you can install any software to the VM. Like you need a driver, GPU driver to the VM. You need a antivirus. You need other services to your virtual machine. You can install drivers, right? Whatever you need, you can install as an extension. So these are your extensions. Then you can inject some custom script. If you have some script, you can pass some script when the VM is getting provisioned. It will go inside the VM and then install whatever you want to. The script will run and install. So these are post-deployment scripts you can run. Okay. Then finally, we are going to select Gen 1 Intel processor machine. Okay. We'll go to the tags. My dev. I will review and create. This will do validation. The API will do the validation. The validation is passed. So this is my subscription, right? This is my resource group, virtual machine, region. This is my image, Windows Server. This is my size of the VM. These are the ports. This is my disk, C drive disk. This is my network, subnet, public IP, right? So this is my web VM name, right? Understood? So this is my public IP. You are going to connect using this public IP. Understood? This is a public IP of your machine. You'll use this public IP to connect to the virtual machine. And these are your security center plan, boot logs, your OS logs, auto shutdown feature, backup, recovery, all these are off. Your patching is automated patching. It's an automated patching. Finally, these are my tags. It will create each service. So what all it will create? It will create a disk. It will create a network interface. It will create NSG, that's a firewall. It will create public IP address. It will create storage. I will click on create. Now this will create one virtual machine which will be deployed within my virtual network and within my subnet. Now you see the deployment is completed, right? Now if I go to my resource group, earlier this resource group was empty. Now if I go to my resource group, can I see what all it has created? Virtual machine, IP, network interface, disk, and virtual network. We'll discuss about this a little bit in detail later on. Now you see here, this is my virtual machine. This is the public IP. So when I click on the virtual machine, so this is a public IP address. Now this IP address is what I'm going to use to connect to my VM. Understood? This is my virtual network. This is my subnet, right? This is a public IP address. This is the size of my VM. This is my disk. So if I click, this is my OS disk. This is my C drive. It's 127 GB. It's running on Central India location. This is my size. It's a Windows machine, right? I've opened certain ports, right? So network security group acts like a firewall, and NSG is a firewall which will allow certain ports are opened here. You see, and NSG acts like a firewall. So whatever you are doing right now, these ports that you open, right? You are open within NSG. Understood? A network security groups act like a firewall, and there is a firewall to your subnet. And inside this NSG, you have opened these many ports. I'll write it in short form. So these ports that you see are opened at your NSG level. Because these ports are open at NSG level, you are able to connect to the VM using this port plan. So NSG acts like a firewall, right? It is a firewall which will allow or deny the traffic that comes outside from your network inside your subnet. So we have opened 3 ports. This is an inbound port. This is my outbound. So anything that goes outside of my VM here, that will be outside of NSG, that is an outbound port. So NSG will protect your subnet and you allow open certain ports there, right? Then public IP you're going to use to connect to the VM over the public internet. So whenever you're going to connect using over the internet, you will use this. This is a virtual network, this is a subnet, all these things are done. This is my VM. So my VM is ready. This is my network interface. What is this network interface? Network interface card is a NIC card. So which means if I go inside the NIC card, I'll get the pop. So this is the IP address of my VM, private IP. VM has 2 IP, one is a private IP. Now why do you need this private IP? So I have a private IP of the VM. Why do I need private IP of the VM? So in case if you are connecting over intranet, you have to connect over private IP. Got it? This is internet. If you are connecting over intranet, you cannot use public IP. You have to connect over the. So to connect to the private IP, you need to. This is my private IP address of my machine, and I need to use a VPN. I want to give more practical knowledge, I want to give more explanation in terms of architecture, right? Because if I simply teach, many of you might not understand. But if I teach you showing how it happens on a back end, right? What is the architecture of it? Then you will get the knowledge much better, right? Here, if you see, this is my IP address, right? This is my virtual network. This is my disk. This is my virtual machine disk. A VM has different types of disk. I'll connect, copy this, come to the VM. I can copy this public IP or I can connect using remote desktop. This is my public IP. This is a port. I will download this file. I will connect. So I'm connecting to the virtual machine. So what I was trying to say is that this is my IP address. I'll pick up this IP address and I will log into the VM. So now you see I have created one virtual machine and I'm able to log into the VM. And this machine has a license of my Windows server, right? This is my Windows product ID activated product key. This is my machine which I have provisioned. And this machine which I have provisioned has C drive and D drive, 2 drives, right? This is my C drive is OS disk, this is my temporary, and I can add other disk also. Got it? So what I'll do inside the VM, I'll deploy one, I'll create one IaaS here. So how do you create an IaaS? You have to install IaaS server. Let me install one IaaS and deploy one site. So I'm going to select web server IaaS. So I'm installing web server IaaS, installing .NET framework, right? This is my web server. Next, install. Now this will install the web server and IaaS. And after this is done, I will host or deploy one site. Now you see, I have full control over the VM, right? I have full access over the machine. I'm installing IaaS, I'm deploying my code, everything I'm doing. So I'm installing the runtime, correct? So this is my network. I have to configure my network. Who has to take care of the firewall? Who has to take care of the security? Who will take care? And Azure, but here who will do? Who will take care of your virtual network security, right? You will take care. Who will take care of the machine? If the machine is, CPU is high, right? When you're running the web application, who will scale up? Who will do that? You have to do. What I'm trying to tell the fact is your network, this is your network, your company's network, right? These are your infrastructure, but running on somebody else's data center. It is running on Azure Central India data center. Your responsibility to manage your network. See, Azure is only giving you a data center, but at the end of the day, your network is running here. Your servers are running here, right? Azure will only give you guarantee about this region. It gives you an SLA about this region. It will not give guarantee for what is running inside the VM. What ports to open, what to not open. It's your responsibility, right? Correct. Whether you go with a static IP, dynamic IP, it is your problem. Whether you access this entire infrastructure using internet or you access them via intranet, it is your responsibility. Whether you want to create 5 disks, 6 disks, 10 disks, it's your role. How many IP addresses you want to use, it's your role. So that means overall you are going to govern or entirely you are going to take care of this infrastructure. But the only thing is that this entire infrastructure is running from a cloud-based Azure data center. So this is called infrastructure as a service. So the only difference from your on-premise, it's running on somebody else's data center. So here I have installed IaaS. You see IaaS is installed. What next? So I'll go to, this is my IaaS server, right? So you have three drives, C drive, temp drive, and data disk, where the actual data you store. Okay. So you see, you have a default site here, and here I'm going to deploy my code. So which means I'll go to C drive, inetpub, www root. This is the path, right? And I will copy some code. You see, there is some code which I have, right? I'll copy the entire code, everything. And let me see if I put it there. So I can map a folder, create a folder, right? Virtual directory, I can create a virtual directory and deploy also, right? I can do all those things. Understood, right? So I'm making this machine into a web server. Understood? So this machine got converted into a web server. Very good. So can you see here, I have deployed all the files successfully. So I will come here, refresh. These are my sites. I will go to the default page and browse. What I'll do, I'll deploy one index file. I need to map it to one virtual directory, so that we'll do it later on. So I'm deploying simple index HTML file. Okay. So I'll browse. Perfect. Now you see this HTML content is working. For the other code, I need to put it in the virtual directory. So now you see, I'm going to access this site using my 20.198.4.132, right? So I can access this site from outside. So I've deployed one simple static content website inside my virtual directory, right? And I can access this website from outside. Can you see? So you all can access the site. So we have deployed a simple static HTML content or a site into our machine, IaaS. This is one way. It's called IaaS, right? Infrastructure as a service. Now, how do you create and deploy platform as a service? Now we understood about IaaS. Next one, we'll learn about platform as a service. So I'll create one resource group, new resource group. Okay, so if you see here, I've created one resource group here, right? Now, inside this resource group, now when we talk about platform as a service, in infrastructure as a service, you have to create so many things, virtual network and all. Platform as a service, you don't need anything. You don't need network and all. What you do, you remember what I told? You can directly create an application, right? So I will go and create one website. This is my website. So I'm creating a website directly. So this is my resource group, PaaS resource group. I'm creating a website, ABC, sales portal, dev.websites.net. Here you see the runtime is provided by Azure, right? Now you see what is happening here. Who's taking care of the runtime? Earlier we installed the .NET, right? No, earlier we installed .NET, right? In this machine we installed IaaS server, right? Everything we did inside the machine. Here, are we doing it? Do we need a VNet? Do we need a machine? No. So who's taking care of the .NET runtime? Right. Okay. So this is Azure. Okay. So this is my runtime which is taken care by Azure. Who takes care of my OS? So here we created an OS. We installed everything here. So this is our responsibility, right? But we have full control on the VM. So here, who takes care of the underlying OS? Azure. You don't get access to this VM. Got it? So it's a completely full-fledged web application. So this is a serverless platform. Understood, right? You don't have to worry about the infrastructure at all. So you can run your application in any language. .NET, Java, Node, PHP, Python, Ruby, any platform. Got it? So I'm selecting .NET. This is my region. This is my OS. Now this is what is my details. Next, when I run this website, I need to select the plan, or I need to select the pricing tier. I can go what kind of plan I need, what kind of performance I need for the site. I can go for the free, shared, basic. Do I need 1 GB RAM, right? What is the processing capability I need for the application? Currently, I'm going with a free tier. It gives me 60 minutes of compute per day. It's a free one. I'll go with a free tier. That's my pricing tier. Now, this pricing tier will determine the location, the feature, the cost, and the performance of your app. Now, this is your instance. This is my plan. Next. This is my deployment. We'll discuss later. Monitoring, we'll discuss later when we talk about monitoring chapter. Now you see what I'm creating. I'm creating a web application, right? But when I'm creating a web application, here I'm selecting the name of my website. The runtime is taken care by Azure. The code you have to deploy, right? The operating system Windows. The performance of the OS is the free plan, shared infrastructure. Everything is taken care by the cloud provider, right? Did I create network? Did I create VM? Did I created some firewall? Nothing, none, zero thing required, right? But my website is getting created. Now, I will show you a difference between IaaS and PaaS clearly. So if you see here, so my deployment is completed, right? My website is ready. I'll go to the resource group and you see the website is running. This is my website, right? So what it has created is create an app service and the plan. That's it. Do you see any network, IP address, VM, anything? Nothing, right? Whereas here, if you see, now when I run this website, obviously this is my website URL. So earlier I run this website. So this was my IaaS. This is my PaaS. Now there is I haven't deployed any code, right? So I will deploy some code to this site. I will show you. So I'll go to this website. Same way, I'll go to the advanced tool and from here, command prompt. So here, so I've updated and added one file to Azure web application. Now if I refresh, this is my PaaS site. Got it? So this is my IaaS. It runs from the VM and this is my PaaS. It runs from my platform as a service. Right, you can change this to your own domain name also, possible. You can change this to your domain also. That is called custom domain. That we will discuss later. Okay, but if you see here, now this is my IaaS, right? Completely IaaS, where I've deployed my application using my IaaS, right? All these things I need to set up and manage. This is my platform as a service. Now this is my infrastructure. This is my platform as a service. Here I only worry about my application and I only worry about my data. That's it. I don't care about the background infrastructure. I don't care. I'm only interested about my application. That's it. Come here. So here there is something called advanced tool here. And you have to go to debug command, and here site www and here you need to place. Okay, you will do all these things. This is a PaaS site, right? Now, if you go to the infrastructure, now you see the infrastructure. Now, let's say I'm connected to the VM using public IP. Now, what will happen? Now, let's say if I go to the public IP address, if I disassociate the public IP address, now I disassociate, right? I'm removing the public IP address from my VM. So public IP I use to connect over the internet, right? Now I will show you an intranet option. Now you see, I will delete this public IP. I've detached the public IP from my VM and I'm deleting the public IP. Now you see I'm not able to connect. Done. There's no public IP, right? So if I go to the VM now, do you see any public IP? No. So I have deployed one website here. So how do I access my website now? I have to access through the private IP, right? Of my endpoint of my VM, right? I need to use a private IP, right? This is your intranet. Now there is no public IP. How do you connect? You have to use this private IP. So to connect to the private IP, you may need to use VPN or you need to use a service called Bastion service. This service. Now using this service, you'll be able to connect to the VM securely through a private IP, or you need a VPN. So to set up the VPN, what you have to do? You have to come to the network. You have to come here and go to a resource, type virtual network gateway. So you have to create a virtual network gateway. It's a VPN. You have to install a VPN, configure a VPN, set up your VPN. So once you set up your VPN, you see, right? This is your VPN. Let's say you give a VPN. Now this VPN, right? You create a VPN You need to set up the VPN with your network. Then with the help of VPN, these users will connect and they will connect to your application. So this is for your intranet site. So to connect to an intranet site, website, you need to use a VPN. To connect to an internet site, you will use a public IP address, right? And you can, this will become your, now this is your, so if you're accessing over the intranet, what is that called? Is it a public cloud, or this is a public cloud or a private cloud? This is your own private cloud. Now this one, only the employees of the same company can access it, right? Got it? Now this is my private cloud infrastructure on Azure. Now within this, I'm not going to allow anybody else from directly connect. They can only connect through the private IP. And inside my firewall, what I'll do, NSG, network security group, I will delete any RDP. I don't want any RDP. Understood? So this is typically your infrastructure. This is what you do in your infrastructure service, right? As a developer, you should know what happens within an infrastructure, right? What it runs, where to open. So you need to open certain firewall ports and all. So your application will be deployed inside the VM, and this is a platform as a service where it's a without the virtual machine, without the infrastructure. Correct. So here you will connect from your on-premises to your cloud. So this VPN is your on-premises VPN. Now you see what happens is Microsoft will automatically do that if you choose auto update. That's why I told you, you should not enable auto update for your production. You can do it for your dev environment. Okay, guys. So for today, I'm done. Thank you for today.
Just a quick info guys, if you want to make a career in cloud computing, then Intellipaat provides an advanced certification on cloud and DevOps by IIT Madras. This course is taught by industry experts and IIT Madras faculty. This course is designed to upskill and land your dream job.